So I had a dream the other night that a man came up to me and he said, "Okay, I know what's wrong with your house. I've done a lot of research." And I said, "Oh, okay, what?" And he said, "It's haunted." And I literally laughed out loud when I woke up because, as one of the pillars of Jungian dream interpretation, the house is known as the psyche. So he's telling me, "You're haunted. Your psyche is haunted." And I'm like, "No shit." And so I was laughing about it, but then I thought, okay, seriously, what is this dream telling me? What is it inviting me to explore? And I was actually thinking about the other dream that I talked about the other day, where I was descending into the shadow realm with all of these kind of decrepit apartments housed in these trees, housed in these dark forests. And I was wondering if those apartments were repressed memories. But I think paired with this dream, I'm actually wondering if it really has something to do with CPTSD. So, CPTSD is complex post traumatic stress disorder, and that is different from PTSD, which most people are aware of. That is typically a trauma response caused by one single traumatic event. We know that from soldiers going to war or someone being SA'd or attacked by a stranger. These types of things can cause PTSD. CPTSD is different in that it stems from long-term inescapable trauma. So a lot of CPTSD occurs in childhood. If you have a narcissistic parent or an emotionally abusive parent and you're a child, you can't escape from that, right? You're stuck in it. You can develop CPTSD in adult relationships too, especially narcissistic relationships. Whenever you develop the idea that I can't get out of this, whether it's you have a child shared between you, or it's a job that you really need, or maybe just simply emotionally, you become so codependent on them that you feel like you can't leave, that can also cause CPTSD. It's when you are exposed over and over again to traumatic events. And what happens with CPTSD is some deep repression. And that's what I'm wondering what these dreams are pointing to, all those little apartments in the woods, and also, hey, your house is haunted. What is the haunt? What is in there? So when we're looking at CPTSD, there's several types of repression that happen, but I want to focus on these main two, which is one is emotional repression. And so that's an unconscious numbing of your emotions. So when trauma is ongoing, the nervous system will overreact to protect itself. And what that does is, so the brain is blocking you from feeling overwhelming emotions like terror or grief or rage. And so as you are repressing these overwhelming emotions in this toxic environment, you basically repress all of your emotions. So this can manifest as like a chronic emotional numbness or dissociation, a feeling of flatness, a feeling of being disconnected from joy, or feeling empty, or actually being afraid to feel joy. That's how it affects me. I think like any kind of success or joy brings me anxiety. And so that is part of that emotional repression. It's my body doesn't want to feel it. It feels too scary. So that is one way that CPTSD causes repression. Things that are pushed down in the shadow. So emotions can be pushed down in the shadow. Ways of being, ways of thinking can be pushed down in the shadow. But another one that's also really interesting is something called structural dissociation or fragmentation. And because CPTSD typically develops during childhood or some kind of prolonged captivity, and that could be mental captivity, right? You feel captive, held captive. The personality will split or fragment to cope with the trauma. And that's what I was wondering, if maybe all of those little apartments were showing up to show some type of fragmentation. And so in this process, the mind does repress the traumatic memories and the emotions by locking them away in little compartments of the psyche. So they're locked away in these little compartments, whatever that means, right? We're kind of reaching around in the dark here to try to understand this. So then we can present as apparently normal to handle daily life, school, work, social events, all of those things we can present as very healthy, but we have this extremely traumatized part of us, or many parts in the unconscious, that hold this terror, that hold this trauma. And again, this is a way that the mind protects the person that has been traumatized so that they can continue to move throughout the world without being broken. But the problem is when this is in the unconscious, when you're triggered, and this goes into shadow projection, right? When you're triggered, you're projecting the shadow onto the outside world. Those repressed emotions will come flooding the body, and you will project that old situation onto something new. And that's called shadow projection. So it's really important to understand that this is going on, especially with childhood trauma survivors or narcissistic abuse survivors. And what can we do? How can we work with this? And I think the answer is just to keep plugging along as much as we can make conscious into our waking lives, ways of being, ways of processing what has happened to us, what we might have repressed. How do we work through the shame, the guilt, the anger, the terror? All of these things can really be helped by talk therapy, coaching. And again, I'm interested in EMDR as a treatment for this, and I am going to pursue that at some point soon. So that's what's on my mind based off of this funny dream. And again, I just thought it was so funny that my dream character thought he'd just really cracked the code. I know what's wrong with your house. It's haunted. So I'm going to be thinking about my haunted psyche and how to start exercising those ghosts or maybe making friends with those ghosts. And that's how it usually works with the shadow realm. We become conscious of them. We become conscious of their existence, that it brings it to light. And then we can start negotiating with how that's showing up in our conscious world rather than letting it lead us blindly through this triggered emotional projection. So that's what's on my mind today. Let me know your thoughts. If you've had dreams of being in a haunted house, do you recognize that you might have something like CPTSD or some kind of repressed trauma? I'd be very curious to see if the haunted house is maybe a specific symbol of something like CPTSD. So if you have had these types of dreams and you think that you might have CPTSD, let me know in the comments below. So